Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants, like, who do you think has the right way to worship? One group doesn't know what they're doing, or?
Within those denominations, we're exposed to a lot of different churches. We'll say, Christ truly is, I want a relationship with him, rather than here's a bunch of rules. I go right to Martin Luther. When he switched over to understanding the grace of God, Romans chapter 1 and 2, not by my works and my righteousness, but it's by God, Christ coming to work to me by his grace and love, that started to change the faith. A pastor from the town over from us, non-denominational, came by one Sunday and said, wow, you guys talk about Jesus here. We don't talk about Jesus, but maybe we should. Well, it's not through the Pope that we get to heaven. You know, when Jesus sends out the 12, they too come back and say, hey, we were casting out demons. We stumbled across somebody doing it in your name, but he's not part of our tribe. I think that's the first example of denominational differences we get in the Bible.
Poor little Cliff Jr. just learned from his daddy how not to answer a question. That young man specifically asked the question. Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox, all the different denominations, who's worshiping this God correctly? That was the question. Not his whole soliloquy that he gave out there concerning when the denomination started coming about because of Martin Luther and started talking about grace and love, because obviously he doesn't know a whole lot about Martin Luther. Martin Luther was a devout Catholic. Martin Luther had no intentions of starting the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther had problems with selling of indulgences and things of that nature. Those were the problems that Martin Luther was having, was how the rich was abusing the Bible. Martin Luther didn't have any problems with all the other rules of the Bible, that you have to be baptized and things of that nature. And there's a process of how you're supposed to worship, that you're supposed to come there on Sundays, and we know Sunday is not the right day according to this Bible, but you're supposed to come on Sundays and you're supposed to keep the commandments and you're supposed to, keep women in their place and all these things. Martin Luther was not trying to change those aspects of Christianity. He was just trying to change the abuse that the rich and the Pope was utilizing. And so did was John Smith and Joseph Smith and all these other people who have come along and created these different denominations. They still implement all their rules. There is not one denomination that has come out and just said that it's just all grace. You can worship your God however you want to worship God. You don't have to come on the Sabbath. Who cares about that? That don't mean nothing. You don't have to do communion. That's not necessary that you do communion. Baptized, it don't matter if you get baptized. There's not one denomination that has come out and made all those types of statements that I have heard from. So let me be clear on them, that I've ever heard of. So his whole thing about grace is just him avoiding answering this young man's questions and stating that which one is correct. Well, you know my answer to that. None of them are correct, because none of them are actually worshiping a God that is the creator of the universe. So none of them are actually correct, that they're all created by man. But as we deconstruct from religion, that is one of the things that we have to do, is go back and study. I grew up Baptist. Well, why did I become Baptist? What is the issue between Baptists and everybody else? And it is because I think his name was John Smith in the 1800s or somewhere around that time frame, thought that people should not be forced into baptism, that you should not baptize babies, that when a person comes of a certain age, then they are to be baptized. Then a person can be baptized based on their own admission, their own knowledge, their own thought process on Jesus, which is why Baptists tend not to baptize their children until their children are of a certain age. Of course, we know that doesn't always work out that way. And then, of course, there was the split with the Methodists, and there's a methodology to worshiping God, and then they can believe you can sprinkle and stuff. You don't have to submerge and those sorts of things. The Baptists believe you have to be fully submerged. But I had to ask, okay, where did Baptists come from? Then, okay, where did Protestantism come from? Where did Catholicism come from? Okay, and then so on and so forth. We do need to understand where these denominations came from in order for us to understand why we deconstruct and why people cannot agree. Why are these points so important that people were willing to switch up their affiliation with how they worship this God? Which just further shows that man has created this God, and man continues to create this God and continues to mold this God in a format to which man desires it. In the video I produced a couple days ago, I talked about the fact that they say you need to be able to understand the Holy Spirit in order, or have a relationship with God in order to understand this Bible. Then I guess all the different people who are Christian that created the 40,000 denominations understand this God all differently. And that is why they created those 40,000. But how can you claim that you have to have God in your life in order for you to understand this Bible if y'all can't decide what is the correct methodology to interpret this book? Because all these came based on different interpretations. So if y'all can't do it, why do you expect me to have this God in me in order to understand your book? If y'all supposed to have this God in your book, but yet y'all still can't agree to what this God is actually saying and what the will of this God is. And if you try to fall back to, as long as they believe in Jesus, that's a sad thing, because even your interpretations and understandings of the teachings of Jesus still go varied, and therefore y'all have even more denominations. So that cop-out doesn't work. And Lil Cliff Jr. never answered that young man's question because he knows that he can't. So y'all have a great day, because it's hot out here. Y'all have a great day, and always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.